Theodore Roosevelt, an important leader of the Progressive era, took control over a struggling project we know today as the Panama Canal. The adventurous, youthful, fearless Theodore Roosevelt would be an appropriate fit for the making of this project. As a staunch supporter of American government expansion and improving American infrastructure, this project had great potential if Roosevelt decided to take the reins. With America's negotiations on the canal, Roosevelt felt very strongly about it at the time, saying, "I don't want to go into history. I want to go into the canal zone." The canal was originally started by the French Compagnie Universelle du Canal Interoceanique on February 1, 1881. The project had been funded by more than 100,000 investors who had contributed small amounts of money each to make a large budget overall. This was driven by patriotic backlash, hoping that the canal would make Americans richer and shorten working hours and mileage. Typically, patriotism is more associated with the non-progressive side of American politics, and Roosevelt was not considered to be non-progressive. Originally, plans by Ferdinand de Lesseps, who was a main engineer of the Suez Canal, called for a 50-mile canal at sea level, running by the path of the Panama Railroad. When the French began digging in 1882, the crew mainly consisted of black and Indian laborers and included newer technologies such as tugboats and steam shovels. Panama's climate, disease, and wildlife were tough obstacles for the workers, and many deaths followed. When the French attempt finally ended in December 1888, more than $287 million of investors' money was spent, with only 11 miles of canal and the death of more than 20,000 men. In 1902, Roosevelt negotiated the rights to the property for $40 million and started negotiations with Colombia for a treaty. Once Roosevelt decides to enter in the efforts of the Panama Canal, he does this to join the business interest side of the United States to help stage a revolution. He says, "Regarding the Panama Canal Treaty organizations, they will find us standing up or dead, but never on our knees, never." With the addition of the canal, according to Roosevelt, Dr. William Gorgas was called in after unsuccessful American attempts for sanitation, such as mosquito elimination. He previously led the cleanup of yellow fever in Havana and carried that knowledge into Panama. The lake and lock idea was also implemented. This system involved damming the Chagres, creating a lake in the interior of the country. Locks would then raise ships out of the Atlantic to the lake's level, allowing them to cross to locks on the Pacific side. Roosevelt was a big supporter of this plan. The canal was completed on September 26, 1913, and opened on August 15, 1914. Roosevelt declared proudly, "A finer body of men has never been gathered by any nation than the men who have done the work of building the Panama Canal. The conditions under which they have lived and have done their work have been better than in any similar work ever undertaken in the tropics. They have all felt eager pride in their work, and they have not made not only America but the whole world their debtors by what they have accomplished." The completion was mainly ignored due to World War I. Because of oncoming war, imperialism was on everyone's minds, and so focusing on our interior was not a top priority. The Panama Canal was overall an imperialist act. By pumping tons of hard-earned money from the American people in the form of tax dollars into this project to allow us to dominate over Panama's decisions would not be something modern progressives today would approve of. I can think of many progressive politicians such as Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that have a very isolated foreign policy and would consider themselves to be in the same party as Roosevelt, and certainly for what he was advocating for at the time. This was what was so captivating about the progressive era. You have someone like Teddy Roosevelt and Jane Addams in the same overall umbrella of being progressive, but they do have varying opinions on certain beliefs. The structure of the Progressive Era is very much like a Venn diagram to me. Good overlap, yet vastly different opinions on either side. It's funny to me looking back on the level of hatred he got from the more right-wing side of America, for example the business leaders, that really misled people to thinking he was a radical. There was another quote Roosevelt said about corporations that I think fits into this narrative. He explains, "There can be no effective control of corporations while their political activity remains. To put an end to it will be neither a short nor easy task, but it can be done." Looking back, he was pretty much a moderate on many issues. From the New World War events setting into motion, this opened a new era for United States politics, and by Roosevelt putting out his more imperialist ideas, this was a turning point in U.S. history. I think the most accurate quote of Theodore Roosevelt to describe his politics as being tough, but being fair at the same time, is "Speak softly and carry a big stick."